Welcome back. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. Keith Rowley, is still working despite testing positive for COVID-19 on Tuesday morning. In an update on the Prime Minister's condition, his office said that he remains in good spirits. Prime Minister Dr. The Honorable Keith Rowley remains in isolation and under the supervision of medical personnel in Tobago. The necessary health protocols are being observed as it relates to the Prime Minister's care. Dr. Rowley's vital signs are all stable and he remains in good spirits. The Prime Minister and his family have thanked all those who have expressed get-well wishes and continue to pray for his well-being. His office also said that he has been able to perform while under isolation. A statement read, quote, "The Prime Minister, also functioning in his role as chairman of CARICOM, is expected to continue talks with U.S. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, chairman of the House Committee on Financial Services, via a conference call." That was a statement by the Office of the Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago. As students return to the physical classroom this week, the Ministry of Education is reiterating the importance of safety at schools. The ministry has been working with the Department of Environmental Health as well as the Bureau of Standards to ensure that learning institutions follow the recommended guidelines for safe reopening.
Students across St. Lucia have begun their return to the classroom this week, beginning with the early childhood centers on April 6. But before they could do so, centers had to be inspected to ensure compliance with the guidelines that will govern the reopening of schools. Training officer within the Early Childhood Development Services Unit, Ruth Phillips Favrier, reports that these inspections have and will continue to be conducted.
The Bureau of Standards were the ones primarily responsible for compiling the COVID-19 protocols which will be used to guide the operations at the centers. Based on those protocols, all early childhood centers were expected to produce a COVID-19 response plan, which outlined in great detail all the measures they would be putting into place at their centers to ensure the safety, well-being, protection, and health of the children, staff, and parents. Those plans were approved by our unit, and then they were forwarded to the Department of Environmental Health, where the health inspectors went out to every early childhood center to ensure that they were in compliance with the plans they had presented to us and that things were in place in keeping with the stipulated guidelines.
The training officer says that while some centers remain closed, as they have not been visited by the relevant authorities, these centers will be visited this week.
The protocols in place are stringent. We have tried to cover all bases to ensure that the health and safety of everyone, which is of paramount importance to us, and we have done everything we can to assure that.
Regular visits will be made to assess compliance.
We would like to commend the administrators and staff of the centers for the tremendous effort and resources expended in ensuring that they met those criteria. And from cursory comments and discussions, we are satisfied that they have complied fully, and we want to encourage them that this has to be continuous. Maintenance and adherence cannot be compromised.
Government learning centers are set to reopen on April 19th, 2021. For the Hot 7 News, Nisha Charles reporting.
April has been designated as Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. Activists continue to lament the effects of gender-based violence against women in St. Lucia. The president of Raise Your Voice St. Lucia says what must be focused on this year is support and care for victims of all forms of sexual abuse.
April is Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. The observance is designated as a time to provide extra support to people who have been impacted by sexual violence and recognize the role that all can play in the fight against it. The president of Raise Your Voice St. Lucia, Catherine Seelys, says what is needed to prove to victims of sexual assault that their voices are being heard is comprehensive support to help overcome the trauma that they experience.
Arresting somebody and conducting an investigation is just one part. What is critical is the mental health support for the victim, because this is something that will live with them for the rest of their lives. And young children are always very traumatized, and when they are getting a little bit older or anything, they begin to exhibit all kinds of adverse behaviors. We put it down to a lot of things. We punish them, we institutionalize them, because we have not dealt with the trauma of what they went through. So we continue to advocate for services, mental health support services, better support services for victims of violence, especially sexual violence, which is really something that destroys a lot of youth. And we do our little part.
According to research done by UN Women, globally an estimated 736 million women, almost 1 in 3, have been subjected to intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both at least once in their lifetime. That is, 30% of women aged 15 and older. This figure does not include sexual harassment. Celis maintains that there is need for the authority figures to take charge and let all victims of sexual assault know that their cries are not in vain.
There is need for comprehensive public education and awareness in St. Lucia, accompanied by legislative reform, and our leaders need to lead by example for us to realize change. Until this is done, whatever we are doing, yes, we will catch a handful of people, they will take note, they will think, but what the bigger operation needs to be undertaken by the central government, and they have not said anything.
She says this month should be used as a time to reflect on the culture of victim blaming and the effects that such has on victims of sexual assault.
The habit and behavior, and that's entrenched in us culturally, to victim blame people who are victims of gender-based violence, which is inclusive of sexual assault and rape, is something that has to be looked at. A strategy has to be put in place. The legislators have to lead from the front to say it will not be tolerated. There is legislation that needs to be put in place. There is behavior change that needs to be called upon. There are structures that need to be in place. That is not being done. People feel they okay because that's how they were raised. That's how they were culturalized. That's how they were socialized.
Celis makes a case for care and support for victims to extend beyond this month's observance. Reporting for Hot 7 News, I am Genevieve Gonzalez.
Stay with us. There's more news coming up after the break.